Hi guys, we're back today with another submission from a subscriber. This one's from Shane S and it's called 2 Tickets for the Cosmic Roller Coaster. It was sometime in late October of 2019. In a curious state of mind, we decided to buy 2 tabs of powerful LSD blotters. We hit the road at approximately 4 AM and hit the 180 towards Pismo Beach. It was a cool, crisp fall morning, with plenty of sunshine and the smell of fresh desert vegetation and calm wind. When we were approximately 20 minutes from our final destination, I remember looking at my friend with slight anticipation and general nervous excitement over the events that were about to unfold over the next 12 hours. Imagine the feeling of being at the top of a roller coaster, but you don't know if the roller coaster leads straight to hell, or heaven, or possibly even a mix of both. The tabs were relatively large compared to other tabs I had taken before in the past. Grey and almost asymmetrical, as if the producer had cut them out of a piece of construction paper. The thought ran through my mind. There's no way you can properly dose a tab like this. After finally arriving at the cold and windy Pismo coast, we stopped by a local restaurant and ordered avocado toast, a meal that has somehow characterised the millennial generation. I remember looking at my plate and noting the excessively bright colours, still anticipating the effects of the LSD, and internally betting on what kind of trip I was going to have. The food took on an almost plastic appearance, and my vision began to widen, reminiscent of high-definition TV. Every detail could be made out in my surroundings, and I could almost isolate every aspect of the environment around me and analyse it peculiarly. This is it, I thought to myself, and it was more than I expected. There's always the ominous sense of fucking up on the come up of a powerful LSD trip, but it's a sense you must keep private. The wrath of paranoia is a social pathogen and a highly contagious one under the influence of psychedelic drugs. After finishing our meal, we left the restaurant and explored the surrounding area. The environment took on an animated sort of appearance, reminiscent of The Simpsons. Buildings began to dance to the cosmic tune of euphoria. At this point I felt like I was at the very peak of the roller coaster, and the drop was about to transpire. It's times like this that you find anything to try and ground yourself to your prior and increasingly distant and familiar dimension. The sheer intensity of the experience left us in awe of Lucy's profound conscious shifting effects. We were closely approaching the point where language begins to fail, and the ineffable begins to take hold, where the lines between the shaman and the casual psychonaut blur. Around this time we finally reached the cool sand of the Pismo coast. It was becoming apparent that the unexpected intensity of Lucy was leaving me somewhat ungrounded and shook. My friend advised me to take off my shoes, and when my feet made contact with the sand, incredible energy shot up through my legs. I closed my eyes for a moment to observe these feelings in detail. The classic fractal-like patterns changed from neon to an almost pearl appearance as the energy flowed up through my legs and attached to some part of my spirit. It was as if Maya was communicating with me through the beach itself. She was informing me that my best option was to fully surrender to the effects of the LSD, and that resistance was entirely futile. The sky began to take on a dark purple and violet hue, alternating between the two. An intricate spiderweb-like pattern overlaid every surface that apparently had eyes between each section. I began to see these elaborate geometric sandcastles rise out of the ground. LSD visuals compared to other psychedelics are very digital in appearance, and the mindset also feels very futuristic in nature compared to the archaic feel of psilocybin. I find this very interesting, considering that LSD is a semi-synthetic substance. Edges of surfaces began to repeat themselves multiple times, similar to the Windows XP lag screen render fail. It becomes easy to fall into an introspective headspace under the influence of substances like these. I remember thinking about the relationship I had at the time and what role I was playing in potentially destroying it due to my insecurities. I observed fellow beachgoers and began to wonder what their lives must be like and the experiences that they've had. I was overcome with an indescribable unity with all things. This is a common aspect of the psychedelic experience, but words are too primitive to describe such an experience. It becomes undeniably true that we are all really made of the same thing that the entire universe is made of. I remember closing my eyes at one point and seeing fluid and shifting rainbow geometric patterns on a black backdrop. They changed colours and frequency, or moved according to whatever I was thinking, or according to the music I was listening to at the moment. In between transitions of music and sounds, the colours would disappear, and everything would become black again. But as soon as the music started, the colours would come back more vibrant than before, and with different sets of colours as well. I remember seeing predominantly reds, blues and yellows, highlighted by dark black and grey edges. They would form either tunnels or what appeared to be a dome-shaped environment that gave off heavy circus vibes almost. I remember thinking something along the lines of, this is synesthesia. I've read about this before. It struck me how an experience like this could never be translated into words, and fully requires first-hand experience to understand the magnitude of such an experience. At some points, the visuals would become almost overwhelming with intensity, and I would become a little scared. I realised this was just me not trusting myself for the molecule, so I decided to completely let go and see where the visuals would go. At some point all of the patterns condensed into a singular point of dark black and electric blue. A blue orb began to form out of this point, and grew what looked like tentacles. It almost seemed like a biomechanical machine, indifferent to me but had immense power and control. I interpreted it as either a representation of my brain's neural networks, or an indifferent entity or device that's a fundamental component of reality itself. We eventually decided to leave the beach. This was sometime right after the peak. We were debating if this was a good idea in the first place, as we were still tripping relatively hard, but also just wanting to go home. We made it back to the downtown area where we had parked the 91 Mazda Miata I had at the time. Upon entering the car, I was taken back by just how much different the vehicle appeared under the influence of this substance. I noticed every single flaw inside and outside of the car in great detail. It's not hard for even the most trivial things to send you into a rabbit hole of self-reflection while tripping on a higher dose of LSD. I started thinking again about where my life was at that moment, where I wanted to go and what I wanted to be. As I mentioned earlier, I was going through some troubles with my ex-girlfriend at the time. I had essentially sacrificed my potential future for her, as I dropped out of school for a more practical approach to life. I realise now that this was indeed a mistake on my part. Being a person with off-the-scale levels of trait openness, working a 9 to 5 the rest of my life is just not an option. Being tied down to one thing is an absolute nightmare for me. This is unfortunately when I started to become depressed. To sacrifice my future for this woman was to sacrifice who I am as a person. And I realised she did not respect that as well. I've seen all of the other opportunities awaiting me if I just decide to follow my instincts. This is the beginning of a long road of self-discovery that eventually led to enrolling in psychology at the beginning of 2021. Psychedelics have opened up a whole new world for me. Psychedelics have ultimately left me with more questions than answers though. But again, what would life be without questions? If our questions were answered at once, would there really be a point in moving forward at all? Psychs taught me that life itself is the meaning of existence, that it truly is the journey and not the destination. It's all about experience, good or bad. Life can be viewed as a hyper-realistic RPG, and we can view trials and tribulations as XP of sorts. We can, of course, know this without applying it, and that is why psychedelics are not the be-all and end-all to life. Suppose you do not use the information you gather in psychedelia and apply it to this level of existence, or become too preoccupied with the psychedelic realm itself. In that case, you will not reap the benefits of this substance. And with that, I conclude this trip report and plan on making many more in the future.